Let's get into it. Sold Not For Sale podcast. We got Joe Rogan and Adam Greentree. Adam Greentree is a all-out, should I even say that? An all-out outdoorsman. I just mean he's a kind of guy who spends weeks at a time in the wilderness just hunting. Pretty much only eats meat that he has hunted himself and brings home. Has wild stories about being out in the wilderness, but in this episode, we are focusing on Joe Rogan talking about what keeps him up at night. And within this clip, he's going to touch on the possibilities of World War III, the homelessness situation, and how sketched out the whole thing is. He's also going to be talking about whether or not, and this is on everybody's mind, could something like this be by design? And I have an interesting theory about this because there's something that he says in regards to the homelessness situation. It's very possible, but not conspiratorial. I want to get into that real quick. Let's start with the Joe Rogan clip, though. Let's go.
Well, I've always been worried.
Oh, you should be.
Especially living
like, you're
in
better
LA.
off being worried and prepared than not at all, right?
I want to say worried. Like, I don't.
Yeah.
What I worry about, like
it.
a legit worry at night when I'm alone, and I've been doing this a lot lately, is global war. I'm really worried about that. That gives me real legitimate anxiety sometimes when I'm alone.
Well,
when
it
I'm
sucks
alone
that
late
that's
at night.
out of our hands.
I know.
Right?
That's part of the reason why I think I worry about it. I just the world has never seemed more haywire than right now to me.
Yeah.
Never seemed more vulnerable, and there's so much. There's just so much tension, and there's so much between this Palestine-Israel thing and the Ukraine-Russia thing, and then China and Taiwan. There's so much potential for chaos. There's so much potential for horrors, and it just sometimes I just really freak out. You know,
I think about it a lot, but more for my kids' sake. You know.
Yeah, that too. Well, like, if you have to provide for your kids, like how? What do you do? How long? You know, how long before you're out of water? How long before you're out of food? You know, how many bullets do you have? Like, what do you do?
Yeah, I'm fortunate enough to be very prepared in that situation. Like, owning the farm and it's got water on it, and water tanks are full, and providing for ourselves and things like that. But
well, if you could get to your farm, also there's so much game out there. You would be as long as these assholes don't keep fucking gunning them down from helicopters.
Yeah, but for the people that live in towns and cities, it's just like, what's your option? You know,
not much.
Yeah,
not much. It's such a precarious scenario because so many people have had things provided for them for so long. They have no skills, no understanding, no knowledge, no ability. They would have to learn from scratch while starving. And that's terrifying.
Yeah,
and that's just assuming you're not getting attacked.
Yeah.
That's assuming, you haven't been invaded. It's assuming that you haven't been hit with a nuclear bomb and everything's gone. It's assuming the power grid's up. It's assuming, there's gas to pump. There's so many variables that are completely out of your hands. And because of what's going on in the world right now, I've never felt more like things could fall apart at any moment.
Yeah.
Like now, it's like, again, it's always late at night when I'm by myself. I just think, because, as a father, and a husband and a provider, you think like you have to figure out a way to take care of everybody. Like, how do you take care of everybody? And then, there's the Walking Dead scenario, right? Like, you got to really worry about people. When resources get scarce, people get sketchy.
As soon as people get desperate,
it's very, very, very scary.
Some of these streets look like the Walking Dead already, man.
Right. Go to LA.
Like 4 years out of the country and then coming into some of the cities that I've always said, like Salt Lake, Austin's the most beautiful cities that I've ever been to. And then, so it was really in my face when I come back here. I'm like, is this COVID? Is the current government? Like, what is this? And how do you battle this now? Like,
it's fentanyl, it's COVID, it's the current government. It's, one of the things we found out about Los Angeles is the people that are working on the homeless situation are being paid exorbitant amounts of money. Like, there's people that work on the COVID situation, the homeless situation in Los Angeles that are making $240,000+ a year. And there's no incentive whatsoever to fix it.
Yeah.
And there's so much bureaucracy.
Cash cow
so
now.
much.
They probably don't want to fix it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, they have no incentive. The incentive is to keep the problem going so that they keep getting these cushy jobs. That's what they have.
That's a sad state
And
of
there's
affairs.
no performance benefit. Like, they're not paid based on the amount of homeless people that are moved into shelters and reintegrated into society. No, they're just paid because there's a homeless problem and there's a budget. We need to raise the budget for the homeless problem. We need to fix the unhoused situation. Sure you do.
Yeah.
But what you really need to do is keep getting paid. And that's what a lot of them are doing. And there's no hope in sight.
Yeah.
And it seems to me that it's reached a tipping point. That once things get so sideways that people are just camping out in the streets. When you go to Los Angeles, like, there's parts of Los Angeles, you're like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah.
Like, this is not sustainable. I have a friend who had a house in Venice, And in front of his house, 30 feet from his house, there's people camping. 30 feet. Like right outside his house.
Yeah,
You've got
insane.
crackheads, people that are openly doing drugs, fentanyl, and they're tapping into the power lines and shit, and they're putting generators in these tents. Like they have no plans on leaving, and there's no one to force them out, no one to try to say, hey, you can't do this. You can't litter on the street, but you can pile all your bullshit on the street, all your garbage, human shit, you know. And then you have places like Skid Row, which Mike Glover, who runs, I forget the name of his organization, but it's a preparedness organization where it teaches people how to, prepare for the worst and what you have to do if, something happens. And he said Skid Row was the worst place he's ever seen. At all the places he's been to, all the third world places he's been around the world, in terms of like just the sheer amount of homeless people, the open air drug use, the no hope, no law enforcement, no nothing. It's just fucking
That's what
chaos.
I've noticed the last 2 trips. Just it seems to be a lack of law enforcement out there.
Yeah, well, it almost seems like it's engineered. I mean, if you were a real conspiracy theorist, you would think it's engineered to collapse society.
And I'm sure there's some very legitimate people that can't help being on the streets at the moment, whether it's from job loss through COVID, whether it's from mental illness.
It's mostly mental illness and drug abuse. People want to label it as a job loss, but it seems like if you talk to the people that actually understand the situation, that's very little of it. Because there's resources for those people, but there's not resources for people that are like severely mentally ill. And also, there's many cities that incentivize people. They actually give people money to stay homeless. They pay them. They give them a monthly stipend, and they live on the street, and they get like $600 a month. And
something needs a change in the system, though.
And the thing is, these fucking people keep voting the same way. They want things to go the same. I just don't know what they think. They think that voting any other way is racist, sexist, transphobic, Islamophobic, xenophobic. It's like they have this fucking ideology in their head, like they're in a cult. And they think their way is the only way to do it. And as long as they're safe in their home, they don't take into consideration what the overall effect on society, all of these laws and lack of enforcement of laws. I mean, there's so many cities that all these businesses, like San Francisco, businesses are just pulling out left and right because they're just constantly getting robbed. They're constantly getting looted. You go to a drugstore in San Francisco, everything's locked up. Everything. It's all behind locks and cabinets, and people just go in there and steal whatever they can. They can't stop them. They're not allowed to stop them. You're allowed to steal $900 worth of stuff. They don't arrest you.
I've seen those videos.
Fucking insane. It's insane. It's a complete collapse of society. And again, it happens so quickly that you have to kind of extrapolate and go from here in 2023 and say, well, what does it look like in 2033? Because in 2013, you saw none of this.
Yeah.
Do you remember any camping on the streets?
Nope.
Jamie, do you remember any camping on the streets in 2013? I don't remember any. Some of it?
In LA, yeah, sure. I mean,
maybe in Skid Row.
not a lot.
There was homelessness in
It
Skid Row.
definitely wasn't like it is here.
Nothing
And
like
not what
this.
I've seen in Salt Lake like last month.
Oh, you see it in Salt Lake. You see it in Minnesota. It's really bad in Minneapolis. It's really bad in Detroit. It's really bad right now in New York because they made it a sanctuary city. So then you have all these people. And so the way the New York State works, Coleman Hughes, who was on the podcast before, explained it, that it's actually a New York State law where you have to provide housing to homeless people. But that was supposed to be for people that live there. So these people have come here from South America, Mexico, and they've made it a sanctuary city. And so now you have entire hotels that are no longer hotels.
Loaded.
They're just loaded up with these migrants. And,
So the next president, if he's up to it, is going to have a hell of a job in front of him.
good fucking luck. And how do you get past the New York State law that says that you have to have housing for these people? You have to change the law.
That's insane.
And New York they don't want to hire Republicans. Everybody's a Democrat.
There's no one person that can do this job. Like seriously, like there's not.
No.
But then the problem is, even with a whole party involved, they get fought against so hard. But how can they make up any ground to really change?
Well, that's a giant problem with our system, this two-party system. It's just so...
So, with everything he just said, the thing that stood out to me the most is when he talked about the salaries of people who actually have to deal with the homeless issue. So, the tinfoil hat in somebody will be, this is happening to bring the downfall of society and everything like that. But even if you want to veer away from that, just looking at the fact that there are some people who are making $250,000 and their job is basically to look after the homeless issue, not to neutralize it, not to erase it, not to get rid of it, but to look after it. Well, that alone will make you look at this and go, well, that's by design, right? They get paid that money. There's no incentive for them to get rid of what's going on. In fact, it's better for them if it gets a little worse. It can never be blamed on them, right? Because it's such a big job. It's not like there's hundreds of thousands of these employees. There's just like a few dozen. You can't put all of that on a few dozen people. They'll be like, well, what do you want us to do? You know, you'd have to pay us more. You'd have to give us more money. You have to put more money into this. And then the government doesn't want to do that. So there are certain things, even if you don't want to give into the whole it's being made to bring the downfall of society, there are certain things that are happening that are by design. You know? I find that very, very interesting. Everything that Joe was saying. And you know what really stood out when he was talking about, you know, what happens if everything like shuts down. And I was thinking of that today. You know, I'm a part of a Christian men's group, and one of the gentlemen posted a picture. He had just hunted a deer. He just got a deer. And I was so in awe of that because I want to learn how to do that so badly, you know, because when I look at that, I don't look at that as, you know, I don't know, someone from PETA or a vegan or whatever will be like, oh, no, why are you doing that? Innocent animal. I look at that as I would be able to feed my family for weeks, months even. I don't even know. I don't even know how it works with a deer, but it was a big deer. So I'm thinking months. And if I could do that 4 times a year and my family gets to eat good, no antibiotics, hormone nonsense in the meat, they get to eat that all year round. I want to do that. I want to know how to do that. And I have another friend who I talk to, and randomly he'll be like, you want kale? I'm like, what do you mean I want kale? I'll go get kale if I want kale. He's like, no, I grew this kale. And he's been growing kale. And on top of that, he's like, I grow it all year round. So even if he gets hit with winter, he's fine. The friend I have, huge stalks of kale, huge. You know, and my in-laws, same thing. You want tomatoes, you want peppers. These are the things that we really need to learn how to do. I really do want to learn how to do these things because Joe's right. You know, Adam Greentree's not worried about it at all. He's one of those guys. He doesn't have to worry about it. He's like, I have a farm. I'll go here. He's stocked up with all sorts of firearms because that's what he does. He's a hunter. You know, he has all sorts. So he's not worried about it. The only thing he'd maybe worry about is water. That'd be it. Yeah, and I want to get to that place. And I think we should all want to get to that place where we don't have to worry about that. You know, but again, when you go to this whole thing of by design, I don't think someone took those skills from me in order to, you know, make sure that I can't be self-sufficient. I think it just happened over time with you know, a company or a few companies that wanted to make a lot of money, and then we as people wanting to give into convenience, and it just happened over time. Like, we want to make a bunch of money. We want things to be easier. All right, well, I'll give you this. I'll make sure I'm the person that gives you kale and vegetables and everything, and it's all right here. You just got to come in and get it and leave. Okay, well, that's easier than growing it, and that's easier than hunting it, and that's easier than figuring out how to, you know, dig a well or have a well. However that, I don't even know how that works. Way easier. We just got to turn a tap. We just got to pay some money. We just got to, and then before you know it, over, I'd say about 100 years, maybe less, all of a sudden we have none of these skills. You know, people, it's funny because we live in this time of all these advancements, but people in the 1800s, they would worry from day to day, but they would never worry about what if everything stops, because they were the thing that kept everything going. You know, well, what if the grocery store closed? They didn't worry about that. They were like, well, I'm going to farm, and this time of year is when I do this, and this time of year is when I do that, and I'm obviously going to do that. And the boy's old enough now, he's going to start chipping in more so. I'm going to have him up at 5 a.m. now. And it was just, that's just how it worked. But now, because of the lives we lead, even someone who like Joe Rogan, who is a hunter, who is somebody who you think, you know, $100 million, you're fine. Like, come on. But even someone like that has to worry about this. We're too far away from self-sufficiency. That's something I really want to start talking about more. I really want to start covering a lot more. I want to start having interviews with farmers and people who grow food. I want to start understanding that and start bringing that to people, because if there's any people who are younger than me, my age, that don't have any of these skills, you need to learn it. You know, I've talked about it before. How powerful is it if you had a community of everybody who knew how to do this, who knew how to do all that stuff, you know, like what's it called? A homestead, you know, everybody knew how to grow. Everybody understood how to hunt. Everybody knew how to find water if it came down to it. That's a very powerful place to be in. You know, Tim Kennedy, I did an episode recently with Tim Kennedy. He's talking about the difference between freedom and sovereignty. And I was explaining it because in that group that I'm in, one guy saw the guy that hunted a deer and he was like, oh, I like animals. And, you know, I would never, I don't want to shoot an innocent animal, but then also eats meat every day. So it's like, that's just how we grow up, right? We all grow up with that mindset of we want the thing, but we don't want to do the thing that gets us the thing. We just want the convenience part of it, you know? And I said to him, you know, that difference between freedom and sovereignty is like, freedom is you don't have to go to the grocery store. You don't have to. You don't have to go to that one. You can go to another one. You can go over here. You can go to a farm. But sovereignty is if somebody stands in between you and those places and says you have to do X, Y, Z in order to have access to those places. Sovereignty, which goes along with self-sufficiency in my mind, makes it so you could say, I don't need that whole system that you're offering me. I will go over here. I'm not giving in to whatever it is you're demanding or overreaching on. I'm not giving into that. I'm going over here. And if you follow me over here, we're going to have a different issue to talk about. That's sovereignty. And I never realized that there was a difference between the two. But I do think about this as well. I don't think about it at night like he does, you know, but I definitely understand how vital it is to be prepared, you know, very vital. I hope you guys think about it too. Really do think about it. And I'm not saying that because I'm one of these people that thinks World War III is right around the corner. I really don't. I don't think it's going to get to that place. I don't think it's going to get to that place where on this soil there's going to be chaos. I don't think it's going to get there. People are like, oh, well, they're going to turn off the internet or turn off the power. I don't think it's going to get there. I really don't. It could, but I have a feeling it's not going to. But I could be wrong. Could be wrong. And it wouldn't matter if you were prepared. If I was prepared, it wouldn't matter if all that stuff happened. But when you're not prepared, it matters so much more. And we never click into that because of how comfortable we all are. I don't know. What do you guys think about it? Let me know in the comments what you think about all this. If you're one of those people who is prepared, you're one of those people who does hunt, you got a bunch of meat stocked up, you got a bunch of shells stocked up, you got all your stuff ready to go. You know, it's funny that we look at someone, everything I just named off, you look at someone like that as a doomsday prepper. But that's just a prepared citizen. That's what you're supposed to have all of that stuff. If you have a family, or even if it's just yourself and your significant other, you're supposed to be prepared. Life preservation. You're supposed to be ready for this kind of stuff. I don't know. I've been thinking about it a lot more. Especially as I go into new chapters of life as a man. It's really, really, really important. You know? I want to be able to, you know, I do these episodes with my wife. She's not here right now. She'll be full-time soon. But I want to be able to provide. I know how to protect her. I got that. But I want to be able to provide. I want to be able to provide even if the lights turn off and the internet's down, or if we move into the forest, we go off grid. I want to be able to still provide, you know. It's something that we're missing. Anyways, guys, like, subscribe, and I'm out.